The Venus Project, TeamSpeak Seminar, July 1st, 2012.
Okay, this is automation part 2.
Now, it seems that the oceans have a lot of resources we've never tapped. And that's, there are material resources that are subject to combustion when raised from the bottom of the sea and exposed to air. They burst into flames. So there are many materials in the ocean which are edible. And if there's a shortage of food, there's no reason why we can't take grass, cut it up, and mix it in with the food, and find other sources of protein than those that are limited. In other words, there's no all-out research on substitute foods, to my knowledge. No all-out research by all nations. Once that occurs, there'll be no shortage of anything. As long as you have politicians, you have people in high positions that are full with gibberish, have nothing to say, cannot alter the world in one iota because they know nothing about it. They don't know how to do those things. Now, should they consult with people that do? No. They should be removed and people that do know work in those positions. And they learn to say, I don't know how to solve those problems. These are the problems we don't know how to solve. And they're put out there at every university, every research lab. We don't know how to make synthetic protein. We don't know what the long-term effects would be of it. So before any project is started, we do a negative study of the bad effects of altering the nature of materials. We study the negative effects over as long as it takes to do that. And when a person says, when are you going to install that? We don't have enough information as yet to install it. There are no parasitic professions, meaning professions that do nothing. There's no random conversation. Like if you go in front of a hotel in Miami Beach, you see thousands of people sitting on chairs discussing a lot of things that have no meaning at all. None. But they don't know that. They're innocent. They're victims of a damaged culture. Now a person says, well, why does your system have more meaning? That isn't the question. How does your system differ from conventional systems? People do not talk about the weather. They learn how to control it. They learn how to identify it. People don't talk about how they think sailboats work. They talk about how sailboats work. They talk about corrosion of metals in salt water. Then they talk about ways of altering the degree of corrosion. Otherwise they have nothing to say. A person says, I have a boat and it's always corroding and it has got barnacles on it. It has all kinds of terrible things. There's nothing in that conversation that helps unless you study anti-corrosive systems. Right now, all the people of a nation do not contribute very much to that nation. Even though they love the nation and will die for it, they really don't know how to contribute toward the nation, toward the well-being of people, and the preservation of the environment.
Do you think that resource management in a resource-based economy is central and secondary is mechanization?
No, they work together. None of those things are secondary. Yeah. In other words, the intelligent management of the Earth's resources mean how much do we have of this material? How fast can we fabricate it? That's done by fabrication engineers. What kind of robotics will you use? Robotics that's relevant to the conditions that exist. We're not going to have robotic trips to Mars, which is irrelevant at this time, unless there's a resource on Mars that we don't have. Now, you'd have to figure out how much energy would it take to bring those resources to the Earth, and how much do we have to expend to make that possible here without going to Mars and bringing it here. That's all done by estimated research capacity. I don't make decisions, no one else does. We know how much arable land we have. And we know that if you keep spraying poisons on the land, you're doing damage to the land as well. But if there's no other method at the time, and they say we don't know of any other method, and no money is allocated to do research, then you live in a warped system. I think we are in a position to tackle all those problems. I don't see any shortcomings. I see people that are not trained in this method, but I do see the research labs training people to serve as aids in research. In other words, if I say you prepare the microscope for 100 different samples, you know nothing about the theory of food or nutrition, but you do know how to prepare the microscope. So people will be trained before they're technically competent to serve routine needs. If you know, in Russia during the war, they did not have the time to train people. Americans trained people on valves on airplane, how to grind a valve. They also teach them the history of valves. The old valves, the new valves, the carbon deposits. In Russia, they just trained a person how to remove the valves, how to grind them, and put them back. That's all they knew how to do. They knew no theory of valves, where it came from, who invented it. They didn't give a shit. They didn't have the time. The Germans were invading Russia, and they didn't have the time to go into the theory of valves, how they were invented, who invented it. All that's nice if you got the time. Otherwise, it's a waste of resources. If you just teach people how to give people injections against scarlet fever, and they're expert at it, they know just where to look and just how to use it, that's all you want of them. They don't do anything else. They don't make any other decisions. If you have a shortage, do you know what that means? If you have a shortage, they used carpenters in World War I to rig airplanes, brace them and all, because all they were given is an assignment. They did not go off on their own. And their test was how well they followed the assignment. If they did not follow it, they did not qualify. Now, if you examine policemen and all other professions, they do not follow an assignment. They have no specific assignment. They can vary considerably. They can beat up a suspect, they can mistreat a person, they can be racist. None of that would be manifest. When you take the profit out and people are conditioned to update people, bring out maximum performance in people, that's all they study. And automation in medicine, they have all kinds of instruments today. They hook up to you. Go to a modern hospital, you see all kinds of instruments that are assisting doctors, because the doctor doesn't have to sit there. He comes back later and looks at the instrument. That gives his blood pressure, his physical condition, and if it doesn't, the doctor makes a note and say check out his hemoglobin. Now, in the future, all things essential to that condition will be checked out by the head diagnostician. And things will be automated in terms of their accuracy. They will have to check it, but if I make a machine that measures blood pressure, I want to sell that machine. I don't hire a group to tell me what's wrong with my machine. Some outside group says that machine was used in 50 hospitals, it's only 40% effective. That's the people that use that. But in the future, you have to have negative studies of every machine. Do you know what that means? So no one can peddle anything. And that group has no connection with the machine except its performance. They check brakes, how well they work, how they don't work, how lighting systems work. Do they illuminate the highway? Don't they? That's all you do. There is no business opportunities. There is no sales pitch. Believe me, this lighting system is the best for schools. No, they use the lighting system and find out whether children are affected by the lighting system. Is there too much ultraviolet? Does it harm the eye? All kinds of studies, not just lighting. A nation without a vision of what the future can be will perish. Has nothing to do with me. A nation that doesn't believe in vaccination will have more dead people from pneumonia. Is it perfect? No. But it's better than what they had before that. So systems can only be selected on the basis of how well the system works. You know what that means? How well does the system work? If it doesn't work, it won't be used.
But you have an end goal of what a
No, I don't.
global cities,
It's always changing.
global systems approach is?
No. It varies with the culture.
Well, I don't mean a fixed end goal, but I mean
Transition. We have transitions and they vary as much as civilizations do. If the Spanish people like tile roofs, if they will never exceed their population need for housing. The best system we have is all we can use.
towards a resource-based economy.
And that's our end goal. If people agree, there'll be a lot of people that will not agree with that. And they will die out or they'll join us later. You can't take people like your mother, your brother, and bring them around. They would have to become victims and identify with it. So what if all the things I say are wrong? That'll be found out during the transition. Do you understand that? Nobody can get up and advocate a direction that doesn't work, because there'll be constant checks and balances. So if I make, say, predictions that are erroneous, I will be moved out of that position, which is good. I say if you sleep with your feet facing the north, you'll have better health. We check it out. If the health is no better, we say sleep any way you want to. We don't know, because a lot of people believe a lot of things sincerely that have no basis whatsoever. And in order to track that down, you can say, we have found no evidence to support that. And there's another group that says, well, we have. And they'll go off on their own, do their own thing. And if they prove right, the other system will be challenged. But you can't outlaw any system. You can check it out as best you can. That's all you can do. I'm just riding the hard line of the Venus Project. I'm not getting into elaborate sunny day in May to convince people. I think we can generate sounds under the water to keep sharks away from people. Or any detrimental for stingrays. We can generate certain types of conditions in the water so stingrays do not bother people. That's where the research would be. Instead of saying 4,000 people were stung this week, the research lab is given an assignment. And their assignments are published rapidly. And if there are any contradictions, please write them in. Let us know what's not working. The Venus Project does not claim omnipotence. You know what that means? Know-it-all. But there are certain things that can be assimilated. You know, when people say, well, all the machines look alike, automobiles do look alike, all Chevys look like Chevys, all Rolls Royces look like Rolls Royces, all people have two eyes. They could have one eye here, one eye there, one eye, and be different. But if the work system works, there's nothing the matter with looking alike. If everybody looked alike, if everybody had good teeth that were not subject to decay, if everybody had clean skin with no pimple, be nothing wrong with that. It's not looking alike, it's what's in here, how much you know. So people will be proportioned in the future to be able to get around. There'll be very few heavy people because the diet will be designed so they don't carry surplus weight. Has nothing to do with the preference of the individual. Who determines what the ideal proportions are? Your performance. How many colds you come down with a year, your vision, your ability to sustain yourself, those determine what method to use, not a single person. The evaluation committee is a committee that does tests, but in the future Whatever the committee does can be done by machine, I'm sure. Machines can check your vision, call out the lettering you see on the wall, H, G, B, D, and if you fail, the prescription for the glasses depends on how well you call. But when it comes to examining the eye, there's a mechanism, there's light, that you follow finger movements. In the future, you'll follow a dot with your eyes. It's the same thing the doctor says, follow my finger. You know what I mean? He's looking to see whether the eyes do not move up at that angle. So whatever a man does can be simulated, except machines don't feel good. Well, if they do 100 people a day and one machine does 30 people a day, it doesn't feel bad. That's the major difference. Machines do not feel. And to give them feeling would serve no useful purpose. Now that's what I've got to say about automation. I'm going to repeat, do not project your own values into the Venus Project's concept of automation. It is related only to the Venus Project. And if you wish to know more about it, consult with the Venus Project and its application of automation to the social system.
First question. What are the most efficient methods for changing human values, for activists and for broad public?
Only if people have questions, if you answer their questions and inform them as to why you decide to do things a certain way, always give them a reason for it.
Sexual repression cripples mankind, and it's the source of most problems on this planet. Do you agree? If so, why?
Yes, it is. They are ashamed of what they do, but it's perfectly natural to have sexual desires. And anybody that tells you that it's the wrong thing to do is projecting their own values. And they hurt people by giving them misinformation.
Jacque, have you ever tried to influence academics? Who and what happened?
I don't have much contacts with academics, but when I do, I will talk to them and try to influence them. Only if academics come up to me and ask questions, yes. I do not force my values on anyone.
Well, you've been asked to speak in many universities.
Oh, that's not forcing my values.
Right.
As long as I'm asked to speak about it, I will.
There's also a lot of information in different universities. Different professors are talking about the Venus Project in their classes. We found that when we went to Pennsylvania. The dean there was talking about it, and different professors were using the Venus Project in their class, as I mentioned. Okay, how many people with relevant qualifications are currently involved in the Venus Project? I think we have over 3,000 people who have signed up on our database, a professional database already. How many people with skills relevant to design the best city? Anybody who is interested in designing the test city, if you're talking about that, would have to really be schooled in the way Jacque thinks about design. So we haven't really been using the architects and the engineers.
Yeah.
We have tried at one point to see if they could do some of the layouts for the city, but we didn't get much response at that time. So we're looking for outside firms now. And how far along are you with the blueprints? Well, we're talking with outside firms right now to do final blueprints and engineering. And how many people have committed to building the first city? We don't have anybody committed to building the first city as of yet. We are invited to Russia because they're interested in having it done there. They're trying to get people involved to have Jacque make presentations about it. They would like to see it done there. That's our trip to Russia coming up in September, if that goes through. Jacque, how can we become 96 and stay healthy, lucid, active as you are?
I'm not that healthy. You're projecting. I'm wearing out.
Well, Jacque wearing out is still better than a lot of people that I know that are young and healthy in terms of what he can accomplish. Are there any secrets or special diets, like nutrition-rich in
Stay away
carbohydrates?
from sugars, sweets. Diminish your intake of sweets.
Right now, Jacque's on a diet with no meats, mostly vegetarian diet, and grains and things
Organic
like
food.
that. Yeah.
Organically grown foods.
And this is asking about, do you cut out salt and sugar, saturated fat? Yes, all that. And processed foods, yes, he's cut out all that. Jacque, when was the last time you had fun?
I always have fun.
He enjoys what he's doing. What role do you see psychologists playing in the future?
Going back to school and learning behavioral sciences. The physical factors that shape behavior, identifying them, and identifying the factors that misshape behavior and produce aberrant values.
Joel, here's a question for you. What have been the most influential books you have read?
The best that money can't buy. I'm not a shill.
Why do you fear your designs being used for profit if the monetary system is doomed anyway? And it's an opportunity to show, A, his inventions work, and B, to have some products for the transition. The army is not an excuse, in my opinion.
I don't really fear it. I feel it wouldn't do any good. That's what I mean. It wouldn't solve the problems. You have to really work at problems and test them and see how they work out. And if the ideas do not fully work, they have to be modified so that they do work.
Would you want your city design to be used for profit from private industry to build your city?
It doesn't matter what they do. The city will not work in support of the free enterprise system. The city will only work temporarily, but it's not an efficient system for the free enterprise system. They like things to wear out, break down, and need servicing. We don't go for that.
When computers began to make their introduction into society, why didn't you get further introduced with computers and their evolution?
I'm not interested in computers. I'm interested in designing a world where there's no war, no poverty, no unemployment, and less disputes.
The rest of this question is, well, you've answered it. Would that be a more logical choice instead of evolving yourself in human emotions?
No, I don't know what good emotions are, except that they serve as a motivator. And if emotions serve to motivate you in a given area, it's all right, if it's constructive.
Do you think it is important to bring academics into working directly with the Venus Project?
If you can, yes, do all you can to do that. And if they don't understand you, tell them to look up the website. And if they find any difficulty understanding it, write the questions in. But before you ask questions, it's better to become familiar with the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy.
What about many ages history of science? What are we going to do with it? Forget it? I'm not exactly sure.
No, you can describe the areas that have been resolved and the areas that are not fully understood. You always tell people what the limitations are. We don't know enough about that particular area to arrive at a decision. We have to do further studies.
Do you think that the history of science is significant to teach in the future? Perhaps that's what he's asking.
Only in that how people come about thinking about new things, the kind of stimulus that enables people to ask good questions. Yes, that aspect of science will be discussed very much.
This person is asking, let's use open source Scrum methodology for our work. Let's also learn GTD to manage our time. We do nothing, just boring lectures and seminars. Let's work and have results.
Fine, if you can do that, go ahead and do it.
That's right. Roxanne, what is the name of the scriptwriter who is working on the film? What is their specific background? We have the right to know as we donated hundreds of dollars. Yeah, that's true, but I want to make sure that it's really a go with him because there have been many. I wouldn't want to give out names. We're supposed to see something in September, and if everything works out with that, then of course we'll mention who it is. But if it doesn't work out, then I just don't want to talk about it until we're really sure in terms of all the details. He's written many books. He's a retired professor, and he taught script writing, taught writing, taught film. And here's another one for you, Joel. What is your upbringing and background? Discussed in under a minute. We want to know.
I can do it in under 5 seconds. I just grew up in Texas, kind of suburbia kind of life, and I went to college, and I started off majoring in journalism, and then I moved around to a few other things, and then I finally got disgusted with all of my majors and wound up going into art, and that's what I did.
Jacque, have you read Some Things Worth Knowing by Stuart Chase? It's not on the book list.
No.
I have never heard of that either. Peer review is one of the main pillars of scientific research, so why aren't there any peer review articles published by the Venus Project?
I really can't answer that.
You work with Germans in the past. Do you know about 1935's Sanger Amica bomber? Do you know him? Oh, is that a bomber? Silverbird. Oh, it's a plane, I guess. Antipodal bomber. Are you familiar with those concepts?
Yeah, it's Zunger America bomber or antipodal bomber. It was the concept of 1935.
You're talking about a plane?
Yeah, it's a space plane. It was developed as a delivery system to bomb America over the seas in 1935.
I am not specifically familiar with that, but I've seen many books on German aircraft and spacecraft. I think I've seen everything that they had to offer. I have no comments to make.
How do the Venus Project members deal with critiques towards the Venus Project reference in this conspiracy skeptical project? I don't know per se what website this is, but we don't usually deal with them. We don't have time. We're dealing with more constructive things. If people who deal with that want to ask us questions or want to know more about it, we'd be glad to talk to them about it. Most of the time, people write things without knowing much about this direction at all. Jacque, do you agree that contingencies of reinforcement can explain most kinds of behavior?
Yes, in some instances this is true, but not all kinds of behavior, no.
Jacque, which parts of your experience on co-finding Rebelle, I love these kits, were more helpful as knowledge backgrounds that the Venus Project and socio-engineering experience and research? And how do you see this experience in the resource-based context? This was a private business venture that Jacque had with Rebelle Plastics.
Yes.
I don't remember the date on that. It was during the war because you
Yes.
couldn't use metals.
Before the war.
Yeah.
It was before the war.
Okay,
With Germany. Before World War II.
Yeah, I guess this person is asking which parts of your experience on co-finding Rebelle. And do you want to talk a little bit about that experience with Rebelle?
No, I don't want to talk about it. It's not pleasant. It's just a price system game.
Yeah, I just want to point out that regarding the TVP book list, that Jacque is not necessarily a fan of all the books and authors that are listed there. Because he and Kaku, he's not, people think that because they're on the book list, they're necessarily fully condoned. And
yeah, there are certain sections of different books that were relevant. What can be learned from urbanistic architecture experience like Igor or Nanigan in the Venus Project concept?
You can learn what not to do.
What pitfalls and goals must we care about on issues maybe not yet covered on the Venus Project blueprints or the best that money can't buy?
What's that?
And meanwhile,
Learn what not to do.
Yeah, okay. I don't know who this person is. Akira Tonayama, consult Jacque about the city design used in his Dragon Ball Z animation back in the 90s. No. Or it was just an influence or a coincidence. Not familiar, we'd have to look at the website. But Jacque didn't have any communication with them. If things cannot be settled diplomatically in a resource-based economy society by using reason and logic with other civilizations, can a resource-based economy then justify the means of war on a civilization
No.
that has a different set of values and
No.
morals?
There's no need for war under any circumstances, unless a nation would invade our country, but there'd be no reason to do that because we extend maximum courtesy to all nations and share our values with them without a price tag after the transition.
Is there a similarity between communism and not?
Communism uses money. Communism has armies and navies. Communism has prisons and police. Communism has social stratification. We don't have any of that.
I have been reading Walden too, and it has become apparent that although Skinner was not necessarily technical in the areas of machine technology and automation, he seems to have the behavioral approach correct. Do you agree with that?
In many aspects, yes. Not all aspects.
Some adolescents are terrible. Which methods will be used to prevent vandalism efficiently in circular cities?
Remember that you can access material just like the public library. That's something you got to get through your head. All things are distributed like the public library. You can go to a library and get any kind of book you want. You can go to the next door to the public library at the camera center and check out any kind of camera you want to. You can go next door to that and check out any musical instrument. We make all things accessible. There's no need to steal or lie or cheat. If people have access to the things that they want, just like the library, then you don't have a problem to deal with. We eliminate most problems by making things available to people. That includes information about the world they live in and a dissection of the metaphysics, where it is erroneous, where there's no backup. Yes, we point out the shortcomings of different systems, including the Venus Project.
This person is asking about concepts of beauty in a resource-based economy. Would balding be defined as beautiful? Losing your hair, would balding be defined as beautiful?
They don't discuss this concept of beauty. It's purely subjective. Remember, if you're brought up by Afro-Americans, they would be beautiful. You're brought up in the Oriental world, particular configuration will be considered beautiful. But we don't use such terms as beautiful. We use a term like extensionality. How extensional is a theory of evolution to your way of thinking? How extensional is scientific information as against opinions? In other words, how useful is the information? And can it be applied for the benefit of all people rather than a selected few? That's our yardstick, a way of benefiting the lives of most people.
Will there be intellectual stratification in a
No,
resource?
not at all. In other words, if a person says, I don't want to live next door to an Afro-American, well, he doesn't want to live next door to you either with that viewpoint. So I would say it's a mutual understanding there. People will not want to do things that they've been brought up not to do. So working through the transition will be the problem area. And it'll take as long as it takes to undo those values. But we do not force people to change their mind. We present evidence to the contrary. And if they're able to understand that, they join with us. If they're not, they remain independent.
will polygamy be allowed in a resource-based economy?
There's nobody that says this is allowed or this isn't allowed. You do whatever you want so long as it's the consent of other people, so long as you don't force your viewpoint on other people, so long as you don't use any type of force, military or otherwise. But polygamy is not a question. It's a consent between people. And if they consent to it, it's perfectly all right.
Jacque has said that in the future we will have names that indicate our interests and or professions. How does that work with newborn babies?
Well, they get that after education. They get a name. Before that, they're treated as a student.
How do you refer to one another, though?
You refer to one another by numerical systems or symbols. Pilots wear wings sometimes. They wear metallic wings. A nurse usually wears a uniform that tells you what she is. But there'll be symbols and diagrams that fit on the uniform and tell you quite a bit about the person wearing that uniform. If you don't know the symbols, you run it through your computer and it'll tell you what their areas of interest are. It will tell you what areas they're capable of working in and what areas they know little about.
What's the most efficient method of spreading the ideas of the Venus Project and the values and re-educating people?
Only if they come to you and they want to know about it, talk to them about it. But if they don't want to know anything about it, ask if they're interested in social design. If they're not interested, leave the subject alone.
Or make presentations? Or...
Yes, if you belong to a church group or you belong to the Optimist Club, you can present the Venus Project as you know how, as best you know how.
It has been found out, thanks to Swedish press, that Doug Millett does not work for NASA and his credentials have come into question. I'm wondering, in a resource-based society, will con artists and frauds be a thing of the past?
Yes.
How is that done?
Well, people are either qualified. When you hire an electrician, if he can't repair your electrical circuits, then you call some other electrician till you find a person that's capable of doing the job. In the Venus Project, we also have qualifications. You have to have been exposed to the theory of electronics. You have to have had exposure to flight training before you fly a commercial airliner. You have to pass an exam. No one builds a bridge without having a qualification or background. If they're fraudulent engineers, they can't design a bridge. If given the drawing equipment and the computers to work with, they won't be able to work with them. So there is no problem in that area.
And there's nothing that people are trying to sell. They don't need to sell themselves in order to sustain their lives.
Exactly. There's no reason for fraud in the future.
If they don't have understandings of certain things, they will look into it to want to learn it, to be able to participate. They wouldn't want to get into something that's over their head.
You can go down and falsify an application and get a job with Volkswagen. But the first day you're there, if you don't handle the car correctly, you'll be discharged.
This question, are you advertising for a scriptwriter for the Venus Project, big budget movie? Not at this time. Is the main motivation of wanting a resource-based economy so people do not have to work? Is that the main motivation?
No, not at all. Main motivation is stability on Earth, the end of hostility, fights, armies, navies, to do away with all the things that are socially offensive, as many things as we can, and to work on problems that are common to all people: heart disease, cancer, cystic fibrosis, and all the other physical disorders. We'll be doing research constantly, trying to eliminate human suffering and misery.
Yes, to eliminate war, poverty, hunger, greed, all the things that should be just a human right for just being born, to be able to be housed, fed, clothed, and then getting on to what it really means to be civilized or human, being able to do the things that you want, that are exciting, to be able to contribute to society without competitivism or stresses.
I feel that our motivation for advocating a resource-based economy is so that people will have an answer to the technical unemployment crisis that's going to be sweeping the nation and the entire world within this century. As Jacque has mentioned many times, technology is going to make work obsolete whether we want it or not.
Yes, that's true, and it would also help with the many multitude of other problems that we have: environmental problems, scarcity problems, homeless problems, war, all the problems that we face today that the culture doesn't deal with at all. Since consumerism based on scarcity will disappear in a resource-based economy, how will the birthday and Christmas gifts in the future be based on?
Exist.
Would it be based on craft work or anything like this?
No. Anything you make personally, anything you create, sculpture, paintings, art, design, decoration, you cannot sell, but you can give it to people of your preference.
As robots are more efficient than humans, as they can live forever, faster, processing speed, no emotions, no sex drives, and can enhance our technological singularity 100-fold, will all humans eventually turn into robots within the resource-based society?
I don't see that. The answer is no.
Do you think in the future that humans will combine more so with
No.
like electronic hearts, or?
I think we'll be able to grow hearts made of flesh and blood. We'll be able to make artificial kidneys, but made of flesh and blood, so that you won't have to have organ donors. You won't depend on things like that. We will be able to replace bodily parts that function better than the original, eventually.
If war could happen with another civilization that threatened the resource-based economy society's way of life, then wouldn't it be the best interest of the resource-based economy society to continue the development of weapons just in case something were to occur?
No, I think we can eliminate the need for weapons by engaging in detailed conversation of the benefits of joining together toward a global enterprise system where all people share all the Earth's resources, and there's no such thing as a control group.
We would really supersede the need for war as it is today. There are reasons for war, and the resource-based economy would surpass those reasons. Will a resource-based economy society just happen on a pure planet basis, or will it exceed to other planets or maybe other galaxies?
That I can't answer.
Do you think we should be going to other planets now?
No, first we have to solve the Earth problems. There are so many that thinking of terraforming other planets while this one is falling apart. First we have to clean up our own planet.
Do you think anything's going to happen on December 21st, 2012 regarding, I guess this is a doomsday of the Mayan calendar predictions?
No, I don't buy that. I don't even concern myself with it.
We might be
It's the
very
same
much...
question of asking me whether the boo-boo tree controls everything on Earth. The answer is I don't concern myself with such nonsense.
We might be involved in a very positive event on that date, but we're working on that. During the transition from a monetary-based society to a resource-based society, many of the older patterns will still prevail from a monetary-based society. I was wondering what old patterns will still prevail and what old patterns will fade away.
None of the old patterns will be manifest because they're not reinforced. The old patterns, you'd have to name what you're talking about. But I can only see people working in service to render service to all people. And I don't think there would be anyone that would work against the system. It hurts that individual. If you pick up values that are personal, it wouldn't be extensional to everyone else. I don't think people will behave in ways to hurt one another, no more than they'd want to hurt themselves.
What about during the transition?
During the transition, there will be problems, but we can get hold of them. We know what to look for.
Can you explain how constructive criticism is important and maybe give an example? Should one take constructive criticism personally?
I don't know. The way you frame your question is strange, but I would say if you can advance any system, you present your concept to a computerized system, which then presents it to all people concerned with that problem. And if they feel they want to change things, they will. If they feel that your assumptions are erroneous, they will let you know that.
What about today? Do you feel constructive criticism is, should you partake in giving constructive criticism to somebody? I'm not
Only
sure.
if they ask you.
Yeah, if they don't ask you, they will most likely take it personally. Unless they're extremely rational, which is rare. Yes, very rare. What message do you have for people who are in prison?
That the real criminals are in Washington, D.C.
Okay, I guess that's it, unless anybody has any other questions.
Yes, please, if I may. Last seminar, Joel referred to movie Project Moonbase and how far general public is behind in the thinking compared to the technological advancement. So can you elaborate on that, please?
I don't understand the relevance of Project Moonbase. Can you ask that question again?
The Project Moonbase movie, we discussed it and Joel said it so we can watch and see how far the society behind the technological advancement, meaning that in the movie, as far as I understand, in the movie it was the interaction between people was shown very primitive versus the technological explanation of their actual space station and the other things. So I thought maybe Jacque can elaborate on how society behind the technology and how we can bridge the gap between that and explain it to people.
Moonbase was written by Robert Heinlein. I had nothing to do with the story, just the special effects.
I think he's asking, can you describe the notion of society is more advanced today technically, but socially they're behind? Is that essentially what you're saying? You wanted Jacque to elaborate on that?
Yes, please.
Do you want to elaborate on that? Or?
I have nothing to say about Project Moonbase.
No,
it was lousy.
It's not.
Only time will bridge the difference.
I have a question. We are going to make a festival in Ukraine in spring, Venice, Ukraine 2013. Can Jacque Fresco come to our festival?
Where is the festival?
In Ukraine, Kiev.
Now when we travel, we have to be sponsored. So you would just have to write me an email. We'd have to discuss it. A lot of times when we travel, we would pay for the travel, for the hotel, for the food and everything, but we can't do that anymore. So
we're gonna pay for all. We just need to know what is your questions. We're gonna do that all. Just need to know if you can and what is your points.
Okay, just drop me an email, meadows@thevenusproject.com.
Thanks.
I'd like to go back to one of the questions that was asked previously in regards to stratification in a resource-based economy. This person asked this question to me via the TVP Global webpage. He was wondering if there would be any kind of intellectual social stratification. For example, engineers, scientists, architects, and whatnot, versus people who cannot really grasp these concepts, people who are more left-brained or people who have Down syndrome. Would the people up at the top of the intellectual totem pole look down upon others who cannot contribute all that much.
No, they do not look down at anyone. They are all participating at whatever level they can serve.
And that notion of looking down at people, I think when people understand that they have nothing special other than had the opportunity to learn through somebody else who took the time to teach them, that anybody can learn anything under the right circumstances, that they will understand that they have nothing, no special talent that they were born with, they are not unique. And most people in that position would want to further the favor to others and teach others what they know. I think that they would feel obligated in that way because they were lucky enough to learn things.
Say something there as well. I don't think there would be the feeling of snobbery that tends to appear when we talk about this kind of thing. When you look down on somebody, it's a kind of snobbishness. So you're thinking that kind of mentality, we just won't have it. We'll be much more collaborative.
You're right there.
Yes, that's true.
There's no need for it.
We'll get more of a kick out of helping somebody than feeling that we're smarter than them. Helping that person, offering them a hand to help them up to the next step or the next step that is possible for them will give us much more satisfaction than the feeling that we are smarter than them.
You're right there. I agree with you.
And it's actually kind of an insecurity when you have those kind of elitist feelings. It's really being more insecure.
Or a low self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is the main job in the future, to be able to bring everyone up so they contribute and participate and feel a sense of well-being and that they're learning and growing. Because you don't want people that are left behind. Everybody who can contribute to society makes your life better directly.
What will happen if the free market decides to use abundance producing technology and technical solutions in order to solve the oil crisis?
I don't think they can solve problems within the monetary system because of automation. If they keep putting in machines in factories, you're going to displace people. And if they displace people, they won't have the purchasing power to buy the products turned out. And that's the end of the system. It can't operate. The monetary system was good 50 years ago, but it doesn't work anymore.
And you can't survive if there's abundance. There's no need to create abundance in this society, but to maintain shortages and keep prices up and keep competition lower for people. They had to come up with alternatives back then in order just to survive and to eat under those circumstances of wartime.
That's right.
This culture thrives off of debt. It survives from debt, perpetual debt and scarcity. Anything other than that, it wouldn't be the capitalist system. Anything else?
You say that in a resource-based economy, we arrive at decisions. They're not made by opinion. Well, if something like a shortage of some resource or something like that appears, and there isn't enough resource for everyone to use, how will it be decided who gets and what is the decision making in these kind of situations, for example, in the transition phase?
Then the research labs are given that shortage and they're told we need a synthetic material that will do the same thing. And they go to work on it and they tell the public it would take 3 or 4 months to solve that problem. But they inform them. In the meantime, they make certain things available that will substitute for that product while you're waiting. The research department will be told always well in advance of shortages. And then all people will be notified of what there are shortages of and where to get replacement material that can be used as a substitute.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, Jacque. I want to ask, what are the most efficient methods for changing human values, forming permanently developing strong culture that can resist some people who try to dominate, influence it, and even re-educate them, so and spread it in masses?
There are no people that dominate. There are people that are assigned putting up buildings. There are people that are assigned the task of building bridges. There are people that are assigned the task of electrification. But there's nobody who gets up and says, I'm going to do something else. Everybody is assigned a given task, either growing food, education, mathematics, whatever is needed. They are assigned those tasks if they want to work at it. People work in education because they choose to and they're qualified to.
I mean, how to do it now during the transition?
Only if they come to us and want to know about it. We do not force our values on people. We present what the Venus Project is. If they identify with it, it'll happen. If they reject it, it won't happen.
And we try and get the information out there as many ways as we can, through lectures or through films or artwork or festivals
or DVDs.
Yeah, and through internet, YouTube.
How to make people understand and change, or how to make them interested, understanding and changing their culture, permanently changing it?
You don't. They have to lose their job, their homes, and not find work, then they are ready for change. You cannot do that to people. People themselves would have to be disappointed in the people they've elected in government. Most people they elect in government totally incompetent. But they would have to realize that. And they will when they lose their job and when they find out that they cannot survive in this system, they will look for change.
There are people out there who are questioning and who want to know. You just have to put it out there any way you can, and when people approach you, be able to explain it well to them and answer their questions.
I mean, a bit different things. How to make them oriented on collaboration, understanding each other, creative self-realization, just preserving nature, space exploration, but not that bullshit they are oriented now.
May I speak to that?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Thanks. On the collaboration side, which I think will solve a lot of other problems as well when people really collaborate, I'd like to speak of the experience that I've got with a linguistic team where we collaborate with people in many different countries. We have currently over 50 languages we support, so that's a lot of different people that we're dealing with. And the working together, it comes very slowly. You have to be very patient. You can't imagine that people will change from one day to another. They have habits that are too deep in them. They're too ingrained in this culture. So you have to be very patient. You have to get to know your people as they join a team, for example, whether it's an activist team or whether it's the marketing team or whether it's the design team. You have to get to know them bit by bit. As the team gets bigger, it gets harder and harder, obviously. But when it's small, and then you can build a strong nucleus of people who will help other people understand. It's a flow of information and it's a flow of example as well. I don't know if you're understanding what I mean. Are you following what I mean?
Go ahead.
I agree with you. I think you have to have an understanding of the people you're working with, and you have to put out the time and effort to change them, if you've got the time to do that.
Yes, and don't expect it to happen right away. It happens very incrementally. And if they change patterns of behavior at all, that's a wonderful thing. You know, they might revert back depending on how stressed they are, how much load they're carrying, how tired they are, but it's a long learning curve.
I'd like to say something else as well about it. I was just commenting to somebody else from Spain in the private chat that this meeting this afternoon, well, for me it's afternoon, is very much more relaxed than some of the meetings we've had. There's a very cool atmosphere, very chilled atmosphere, and I think this is a sign that we are getting used to each other, we're growing together, we're asking. Today, for example, I feel as though we're talking a lot more about the values and things like this, which is something we need, we really do need to talk about and understand. And I think it's a sign that we're growing and that we're learning slowly to collaborate together, and that's wonderful.
I see. What are the most efficient methods of changing mass values and patterns of behavior that we can apply now?
By proving to people. You have to set up evidence and proof of the value system that you're advocating. You'll have to show or demonstrate why certain things work, why certain things don't work, and if they can't understand that, then you have to let it alone and get on with somebody else. It doesn't take convincing everybody. Remember, most people don't even know how their telephone works. You don't have to know those things. It's very few people that devise new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things. Not everybody. Just remember this if you can. There are probably no more than 200 people that have given us everything we have. Refrigerators, electric lights. It isn't millions of people that give us those things. So you don't need to convince everybody. You have to convince a large part of the population to trust grid engineering. You have to convince a large portion of the population that architects and structural engineers can design better structures than they can, in most instances, not all instances. So you don't have to convince everybody. That's a misunderstanding.
What can you suggest how to approach mass media and how to work with mass media?
Work with mass media because they're commercial institutions. GE owns NBC. And when you think about it, all the institutions are owned by private enterprise. So they're not about to do away with themselves. Do you understand what I said?
But we can I see, but they are also people, and they also can be re-educated, and their values can be changed of some people who influence media.
Only if the system collapses.
If you feel that you can approach different media and possibly have them put Paradise or Oblivion on their network or whatever media that you're talking about, that would be great.
Without them re-editing.
Yeah. And we feel that the best way to change people is through film. You can reach a lot of people in a short amount of time. That's why we're trying to get the film off the ground too, a major film, in a more entertaining way as well. We have one more question?
Yeah. It's a question directly to Jacque Fresco. Have you read Edward de Bono books?
What did he write?
He's still alive and he's writing about creativity and how brains works. It's more psychological things.
Everything I've read on how the brain works doesn't seem to correlate with the information I've gathered.
But you're not familiar with this person, right?
No, I'm not.
I don't know if you have free time, but it's something that are people that they can't know about these things. It's only for few people who knows it. But it's very interesting works from Edward de Bono, how to work on creativity, how to implement some more creative work, or etc. It's interesting. I'd like you to read it. It's very useful.
Within a monetary system?
It have no connection with any system, monetary or not. It's just how you work with logic. It's about logic, about water logic, about, you know, this word lateral thinking.
I have no use for those words. I can just tell you this, that the more exposure you have to many different value systems and many different engineering projects, the more you know about, the broader your contributions will be. In other words, if you want to be creative in any field, read many different types of books about the ideas And the more you read, the more you know about things, the broader your creativity. If you only read one book, the Holy Bible, you will not know how to make better electronic equipment. If you want to know, be creative in electronics, read in the field of electronics. Study as much as you can about it. That'll give you the power to be creative. Creativity is not inborn. It has to do with the effort you put out trying to understand the world you live in.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. It's just an interesting way that is really have some results on how to implement some things on or how to solve the problem that just Igor was talking about human values. It's about creativity. People would like to have to do some things, to make creative things, or etc. etc. Like now in chat, Vasil talking about engineer projects. To work on the engineer project, you need a stone logic and water logic. Water logic is where we are going to, and stone logic and what is. Like it's very interesting way we can integrate it in all the Venus project like overcomes.
Send the book if it's in English.
Yeah, sure. Can I send it in the chat?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I guess that's it for this week. Thanks very much, everyone.
Yes, thank you all. I deeply appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, we appreciate what everybody's doing.
And we appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thanks, Sue.
Hugs to everybody. Bye for now.
Yes, thank you very much.